There is a magical operation of maximum importance. The initiation of a new aeon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are the Classic Gaming Brothers. I said it this time. You got mad at me last time we recorded. You said I didn't say that's right, and you got a little grumpy.
That's right. Yeah.
I blame it on you having a cold at the time. Do you still have a cold?
No. It lingers, though.
Well, I'm glad that you're feeling a bit better, and hopefully you're right as rain, as they say, in the next few days.
Yeah, I just have a little bit of a cough, but that's pretty much it. So, this episode comes live from our producer who wrote to us and
live from our producer. Is he like teletyping it to us right now?
Yes.
Yeah, we're getting like transcripts sent in over. He's actually writing these words I'm saying at the moment.
Yes.
Every word I say following this is his words.
He says, I'm challenging you to do an episode today, The Legacy of Kain.
Yes, and we will talk about Blood Omen, The Legacy of Kain, the first game in the series. Before we do, I do have a couple of corrections that come at us from listeners. That's right.
People wrote in to us.
People did write into us. Well, the first correction came from Classic Dad, who was listening to an episode. I can't tell you which episode because I don't remember, but apparently in a previous episode, I said Gregorian mansions, and I meant to say Georgian mansions, as in the architecture style Georgian that is associated with the period of time between 1714 and 1830 during the reign of Kings George I through the IV, not Gregorian, which pertains to the theology or things related to Pope Gregory I, the 8th or the 13th, but is largely used in reference to things like the Gregorian chant from the era of Gregory I or the Gregorian calendar from the era of Gregory the 13th. There is also a horse whose name was Gregorian, and he lived from 1976 until 2002 and held a pretty decent record before he was retired and became a breeding horse.
It's from the Laura Croft episode was when you were referencing her mansion.
Oh, yes. Okay, that makes sense.
Is this Gregorian horse still alive?
He died in 2002.
Oh. I thought he was doing his thing where he had a record and then he retired in 2002.
He was only a racing horse for a few years because racing horses tend to only race for a few years.
Yeah.
So he only raced, I think, for like 2 to 3 years of his life. Like he was racing at age 2 or 3, but then he retired and became a breeding horse.
Yeah, I just thought he was racing, like his 26 years of racing and then he'd retired.
That'd be a very old horse.
That'd be a pretty baller horse.
Now, the other correction comes from listener, fan, and friend of the show, Sean, who corrected the record on another thing I said in our Pokemon Fire Red episode. I said that in the original game, Pokemon Red, someone will challenge you to a Pokemon battle, and that person says, I don't like your shorts. This is wrong. The correct quote is, I like shorts. They're comfy and easy to wear. And then that person still challenges you to a Pokemon battle after telling you this piece of information about their life. In any case, those are the corrections for our past episodes. And let me remind you, listeners, if you have a correction on a previous episode, let us know, and we too will correct the record. This has been Correcting the Record with the Classic Gaming Brothers.
Man, what if we were so misinformed we had a segment where we corrected the records?
That's not impossible. We are likely wrong about a lot of things, to be honest.
If you send in enough corrections, we will start a segment just for everybody where we will correct the record.
We could do a whole episode just on episode corrections if we...
Oh, that wouldn't be very exciting.
Well, Seth, beyond all that, what have you been recently playing?
Recently, I decided to pick up a game that was named after our segment. Since our segment came first and this game came second, they clearly took our name for inspiration, and that is Retro Rewind Video Store Simulator. I was playing the demo, and the true game came out in March 17th of this year and was developed and published by Blood Studios. In the game, you manage your very own video store like it's the early 90s. In fact, the game is priced at MSRP $19.90, which is fun, but with taxes it pushes it over $20. But it is a fun MSRP of $19.90, and if you live in a sales tax free state, you can also buy the game for the year 1990. In the game, you rent, sell, and decorate your business, and you build it from the ground up and have to deal with all the nuances of running a video rental store, such as renting videos, recommending videos, rewinding videos, getting new videos, and being trendy with the videos. Some of these simulator games can be hit or miss. Some of them are a lot of fun. Some of them have a lot of minutia work that goes into it before there's a lot of fun. So I always play the demos of these simulator games before I buy them because I'm worried they will not be fun. So I got the demo of Retro Rewind, and I will say that I picked it up because I enjoyed the demo enough that I was like, this is actually a pretty fun game. It's like feature complete. They even have like loyalty programs and like snacks, and there's all this sorts of stuff that you can really build out your video store. I think one of the best parts that I like is that it gives you a bit of a downtime in the beginning to kind of organize things without really pressuring that the time's going to start, which a lot of these games have, which is like your like pause time. And then you have a flow of customers and you have to go to the register. It does change pretty easy. You're not like struggling to figure out math. It tells you how much you need to give back to the person. So it's pretty cool in regards to the simulation aspect. I like you get store flyers and you can just walk outside of your store, just hand flyers to people walking by about your store that they're literally walking by, which I guess helps, but also I feel like I would be annoyed if I was walking by a store and somebody ran out and gave me a flyer. It's a cool simulator game, Retro Rewind Video Store Simulator. It's got a great name named after our Retro Rewind segment. And it was developed and published by Blood Studios.
Nice.
So check it out on Steam and I'm sure other stores.
Bloodpack will be waiting for the check in the mail.
That's right. Anyway, Zach.
Yes, Seth.
What have you recently been playing?
Recently, Seth, I've been playing Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, better known in Japan as Biohazard 7 Resident Evil. Developed by Capcom and released in 2017, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is, as the name implies, the 7th game in the long-running Resident Evil series. However, unlike previous games, which have often used a third-person perspective, this game is entirely in first person, and it's the first game to be entirely in first person. The game is also more centered on pure horror, as opposed to kind of a mix of horror and action that the previous titles have. In the game, you play as Ethan Winters, who is this guy. He's not really anything, he's just a dude. And he goes to a rundown house plantation place in Louisiana to find his wife, Mia, who has been missing for 3 years. He gets a mysterious message from her implying that she is around and alive and just down in Louisiana. So he drives down there. He finds this abandoned house where the coordinates that she provides lead him to. And when he arrives, after sneaking around this abandoned house for a bit, he finds Mia locked in a basement prison. After releasing her from the prison, she is thankful and then immediately attacks you. And you very quickly have to defend yourself. Like, this is not really a spoiler in the game. This happens really within the first 20-30 minutes of the game. But you have to defend yourself from her, and you end up seemingly killing her with a hatchet. However, she comes back to life almost immediately after you kill her. And after you fight her a few times, you are introduced to the Baker family. The Baker family is the family that lives on this plantation, and they are a cannibalistic group of people who are possessed by some strange condition that allows them to regenerate their body parts and cheat death. Your job is to figure out what exactly happened to Mia, who these Baker family people are, and to escape the house. It's a pretty spooky game and quite difficult. It has the same kind of level of difficulty that other Resident Evil games have, but now it also is subject to a limited point of view. Being a first-person game, you kind of have less of a view around you that you might get to avoid things in other Resident Evil games. And this can be challenging, especially when you're trying to escape the father, as he's called, who is this patriarch of the family that occasionally bursts through walls and chases you around the house. It's definitely an interesting game. It's definitely very creepy, a little spooky. I previously played the game in VR back when I had a PSVR, but I found the game way too scary to play in VR.
I wouldn't play any Resident Evil in VR.
Yeah, this one is rough in VR because it is scary, scary, scary. But I then decided I was going to pick up the game for PC because I tend to do better with first-person games with mouse and keyboard than I do controller-wise, like in terms of gameplay. Like, it still scares me. That doesn't change. But like, if it's a first-person game, I tend to prefer mouse and keyboard control versus a third-person game, I tend to prefer controller. I had the game on PS4, but I decided to purchase it on PC when it was on sale so that I could actually play it on PC with mouse and keyboard. And I like it a lot. I love Resident Evil as a franchise. I like all the Resident Evil games. I'm a big fan of the remakes they've done, such as the Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 4 remake. I still want to pick up 9, which is the most recent one, Resident Evil Requiem, as that kind of is a return to form to the classic Resident Evil of mixing action with horror, but I'm still enjoying Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, and once I'm finished with this game, I was going to get into Resident Evil 8 Village, which is kind of the follow-up where you continue Ethan's adventure of having a really miserable time of his life. In this game, you get injured a lot in your hands. That's like, your hands keep getting stabbed and jabbed and jostled, and at one point your hand gets chopped off and then sewn back on. It's just gruesome. Yeah, that's Resident Evil 7 Biohazard.
Nice. That sounds like a scary game. I think I actually own Biohazard.
I think it was free at some point too, maybe? I don't know.
I have the Biohazard 6 benchmark tool.
Oh, okay.
And then I have Resident Evil 5.
Resident Evil 5 is definitely not as scary.
Do you think the Biohazard benchmark tool is scary?
Yeah, I think it's terrifying. That being said, we're going to get into something else that's scary, The Legacy of Kain. I actually don't know if it's scary, but it has scary elements because it's vampire themed.
I don't know if I think it's actiony.
It is actiony, yeah. But yes, we're talking about Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, per our producer's request. In terms of memories, I'll go first. I don't have any memories of Legacy of Kain. I don't think I've played any of the Legacy of Kain games, to be honest. Though I do own it, thanks to GOG. I'm pretty sure I got it for free as part of an Amazon Prime Twitch thing. For those who don't know, if you have Amazon Prime and you have a Twitch account and you link them together, occasionally you get free games through something called Luma. Previously it was just through Amazon. Amazon Prime had like a thing with Twitch, but then they created this thing called Luma, which is their own platform, and they still give out free games. They give it out more on their Luma platform, but they still do keys for GOG games or for Epic. And I got Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, from one of these Twitch Prime things. I just haven't played it yet, but I do own it. And beyond that, I might have seen the
you
box
have memories
art
of purchasing it.
I have memories of having it recently.
Or not even purchasing it. Receiving it for free. A true collector memory.
A true collector memory. I mean, I vaguely think I remember seeing the box art for it, like in the store maybe, but I really don't think I knew anyone that played it. But what about you, Seth? Any thoughts or memories of Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, or any of the Legacy of Kain games?
I have distinct memories of Legacy of Kain because in college, I was friends with somebody who was obsessed with Legacy of Kain.
Nice.
To the point where he played it all the time, including when people were visiting him. He had very long hair, and he had a sword that was a replica from the game, and he would show it to everybody when you came over to visit him. He would be like, you would show up, and he had a manufactured name as well. He would buy his internet handle in real life, and once you arrived at his house, he said, oh, let me show you my Legacy of Kain sword. And then he would show you his Legacy of Kain sword, and then at the time that you came over, may have had Legacy of Kain running on his computer at all times, or wherever you played them. PlayStation, I guess. Maybe he did have it on PC. I feel like I have memories of him having a computer set up in his like dining room that had Legacy of Kain just on it. So yeah, so he loved Legacy of Kain enough for everyone in his circle of friends to appreciate it and to have memories of it without ever actually playing it ourselves.
I don't have a friend that was obsessed with Legacy of Kain, but that does remind me of a friend of mine who I don't know if listens to this show, but if they do, I won't name them by name, but they were really into TF2 back in high school. Like so into TF2 that when we would go over his house, he would be playing TF2 while we were doing other things, and sometimes he would just go on idle servers and sit at his computer and stare at the idle server while we did other things. But I have the strong memory of us playing Mario Kart and me being like, hey, you wanna sit in on this next one? And he was like, nah, don't worry, I'm busy right now. And he was just sitting on an idle server.
Playing some TF2.
But it was an idle server, so just watching his character like scroll across the screen and then get killed as a like way of farming hats.
Hey, at least your friend got something out of it. There was nothing to gain from playing Legacy of Kain as much as this guy played Legacy of Kain.
Well, to get into the history of Legacy of Kain as a franchise and Blood Omen as a game, the Legacy of Kain games got their start at Silicon Knights. I have no idea if we've ever talked about Silicon Knights before. We might have mentioned them kind of offhandedly, but for those who don't know, Silicon Knights were a company founded in 1992 by Dennis Dyack and Michael Mays in St. Catharines, Ontario. Their earliest games would be developed for the Atari ST and MS-DOS. This included games like Cyber Empires, Fantasy Empires, and Dark Legions, released in 1992, 1993, and 1994 respectively. In the mid-1990s, the company shifted focus to the console market, with their first console game releasing in 1996 for the Sega Saturn called The Horde, which was a port of a Toys for Bob game originally released on the 3DO. Prior to the shift, however, in 1993, Dennis Dyack began coming up with a new idea for a game that he had titled The Pillars of Nosgoth. Dennis, along with writer Ken McCulloch, had an idea for an epic game with hopes of developing something with a bigger budget that then they would use to create this epic game they envisioned. The games they were making, they had budgets, but they were nothing near the kind of epic scale that huge publishers would often provide developers. So they started coming up with this concept for a game of the Pillars of Nosgoth, coming up with different ideas and such. And they pitched the ideas to different publishers. They also pitched a few other game ideas that they had at the time to the different publishers so that they would pick up something. Crystal Dynamics would be the publisher that would sign a deal for the game, The Pillars of Nosgoth. After this deal was signed, the team continued to work on development of the game itself. Lyle Hall of Crystal Dynamics thought the game would be something that they could make as a quote-unquote Zelda-style take on a vampire action RPG, and helped Dennis move the game's development from the 3DO to the PlayStation, which was probably a very smart idea because the 3DO was very cool, but it also was a bit of a commercial failure. PlayStation was also very cool and was a very strong commercial success.
We heard about these Crystal Dynamics folks before.
Yeah.
I remember that they may have created a Lara Croft game.
They sure did, and they're still around.
There's a theme to our recent episodes then.
Yeah.
They're Crystal Dynamics themes. Legacy of Kain. Look, the producer occasionally does things that have rhyme and reason.
I believe it.
There is another game that Crystal Dynamics worked on.
Yeah.
That perhaps we could put in as a third game to talk about.
What's that?
Gex.
Nice. Oh, we should talk about Gex. Now, the idea for the Pillars of Nosgoth, in terms of its story and style, came from a web of different places. As it was going to be a vampire game, they obviously took from common vampire folklore, but they were also inspired by things like The Wheel of Time, the book series, the film Unforgiven, and the works of William Shakespeare. One element that the developers wanted to focus on in the game was the idea that the main character of Kain was an anti-hero, which I was reading wasn't super common for adventure games, at least in the 90s. They usually focused on heroes, not really anti-heroes, so it was kind of unique. They adopted this narrative motif of what is evil. Perhaps it is merely a perspective, in order to help guide the story of the game as well as inform the player's decisions throughout the game.
The name of the game, Pillars of Nosgoth, would change at some point to Blood Omen, though Nosgoth would remain as the central setting. Another change in the game during the development was the addition of a weapon called the Soul Reaver, which my friend who went by his internet handle had a replica of, which was originally intended for another Silicon Knights game too human. They would move the weapon from their early concept of too human into Blood Omen. As part of the game's creation, voice actors were hired on to provide voiceover work. One of these actors would be Simon Templeman, who would go on to voice the lead character of Kain. Previously, Simon had been involved in the show James Bond Jr. as Trevor Noseworthy IV, and he would also play Sir Mordred and Sir Gideon in The Legend of Prince Valiant, and Sir Mordred again in Biker Mice from Mars. Classic television.
I have no idea why there was a Sir Mordred in... I know why there was one in The Legend of Prince Valiant, but in Biker Mice from Mars...
That's all right. Biker Mice from Mars is wild. They do a bunch of weird things. I mean, they are biker mice from Mars, so like it's okay if they have Arthurian legends to fight with. The game would take around 3.5 years to develop. During this time, Crystal Dynamics flew staff out to Canada to assist Silicon Knights, though reportedly did not provide the staff with accommodations, which if you own a company, you should not do to your employees, because that's mean. Just be like, go out there and help them. For how long? A while.
They're flagged about from California. Like, apparently some of the people that flew out there were like, this was a huge detriment on my family because
it depends on where in Canada they're going.
Ontario.
I would sleep at the office if I was a member of the Crystal Dynamics staff that was sent to flow out. I would just be like, well, I guess I just live here in the office.
Yeah.
So I'm not paying for accommodations if you're not, like, if I'm doing this for you. The legacy of Kain would be promoted at both the 1995 and 1996 E3 show, and finally released for the PlayStation, which is what my friend owned it on, in November of 1996. A port to Windows was published in 1997. There were also plans to port the game to Saturn, but this was canceled. Rumor has it that the Saturn version was nearly done, but they weren't able to find a publisher willing to publish the game due to Saturn being a failing console. But Silicon Knights does dispute these rumors officially.
Now, Blood Omen is set in the land of Nosgoth, a world inhabited by vampires and humans. The health and the structure of the world is connected to 9 supernatural pillars, known as the Pillars of Nosgoth, with each pillar being protected by a human guardian, and all of 9 of these guardians form a group called the Circle of 9. If one member of the Circle of 9 dies, a new member is chosen to take their place. The Circle is responsible for the creation of the Seraphim, a group that was tasked with hunting down vampires. The group was largely defeated due to the efforts of Vorador, a vampire who kills 6 of the guardians and the leader of the Seraphim. And this all takes place before the events of the game. This is like in the prologue. Now, in the years that follow, the Seraphim have disbanded, but vampires are still heavily persecuted throughout the land. The humans of the world are effectively divided into 2 factions. There's the Kingdom of Wellendorf and the Legion of Nemesises. You play as Kain. Kain was a young nobleman who got killed and then was resurrected and turned into a vampire. Kain is this kind of morally ambiguous character, having been reborn as a vampire due to a Faustian bargain made by Mauritanius the Necromancer, and your job as Kain is to restore balance to Nosgoth by cleansing the pillars after they've been corrupted by Nubraptor the Mentalist. There's a lot of names in this game that are very fantasy sounding and a little silly. It's like Mauritanius, Nubraptor, the Seraphim, Vorador, the Circle of 9. You can see where they pulled inspiration from things like Wheel of Time and other fantasy elements.
Morrowind.
Now, Blood Omen is played in a top-down perspective where you control Kain. You travel through various dungeons and hack and slash segments. You have to solve puzzles, avoid enemies, and ultimately defeat the members of the Circle of 9 who act as bosses to cleanse the pillars of Nosgoth for their corruption. As you're a vampire, you must consume blood of living creatures. Your health meter, which is represented as a red bar, depletes over time. So it is required that you feast upon the living. This isn't like your health meter can stay stable if you're just really good at the game. No, it's constantly going down because you are hungry.
Oh yeah, you need energy.
You also have magical abilities that you can use, such as shapeshifting, which requires you to use magic energy, which is a separate bar. This bar can be recovered by drinking blue blood associated with ghost-like enemies or spirit-like enemies. So when you kill some enemies, they give you red blood. If you kill other enemies, they give you blue blood. The game is played in a largely non-linear fashion, in that you can return to previous checkpoints throughout the game through use of a fast travel mechanic where Kain turns into a bat. And for a game from like the 1990s, for the PlayStation, having fast travel in it is pretty cool. I don't think there's a ton of games that used fast travel for PlayStation in particular. I might be wrong, but I think that's more of a more modern mechanic for open world games. So it's cool to see. You get a variety of weapons you can use. There are different elemental swords. There's a mace. There are axes. The Soul Reaver itself. You could also get different types of armor. There's armor made of different ores, such as iron. There's armor made of bone. There's armor made of flesh, there's armor made of wraith, and there's armor made of chaos. I assume it's an energy chaos, not just like the concept of chaos, like the theoretical attribute of chaos.
I like thinking about the armor. When you said the armor was made out of wraith, I heard wreath, and I thought that it was like iron, bone, Christmas trees, flesh, and chaos. It's just like, wait a minute, there was something that does not. But maybe if it was a Call of Duty game.
Yeah, right. Now, all of these armor sets offer different advantages and disadvantages. And another thing that the game does is utilize a day and night cycle where Kain becomes more powerful during the night cycle as he is a vampire. And he also, during certain moon phases, will be able to unlock special doors. And there are a lot of secrets in this game. Apparently, there are 100 different secrets that can be found throughout the game, encouraging you to explore and search around. Now, Seth, how did Legacy of Kain do?
Per a court filing in 2011, it is estimated that around 320,082 units were sold. Silicon Knights reportedly would state that 2 million units were sold, but there's no evidence of that being the case.
Yeah, I mean, there's a court filing which says 320,000 units were sold, and Silicon Knights was like, no, 2 million.
Yes, but they wouldn't say that in court.
Right.
In fact, Zach and I released a classic Gaming Brothers game with 4 million copies sold.
That's right, but we'll never say that in court.
We'll never say that in court. The game, however, was viewed as a success by Crystal Dynamics, because even 320,000 units was still pretty good at that time. The reviews of the game, and if my friend didn't buy it, it would have been 320,081 units.
That's right.
The review of the game were fairly positive. All Game gave the PC port a 4 out of 5 and the PS1 version a 3.5 out of 5. GameSpot gave the PC version a 7.6 out of 10 and the PS1 version a 7.1 out of 10, and IGN rated the PS1 version an 8.5 out of 10. Critics praised the audio, the story, and the overall scale of the game, but the PlayStation version did have some criticism lobbed at it for the graphical limitations. Some reviews, like that of a PC gamer, found the game's graphics to be a bit too dark, and also frustration in the game's artificial intelligence for NPCs. See, I still am debating. I think he did have a CRT with running Legacy of Kain on his desktop on the PC.
Maybe.
Or both. Maybe he had 2 copies.
I mean, if you loved Legacy of Kain, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I probably had all the copies, especially since he had a replica of the Soul Reaver. There was some controversy following the release of the game. When the game was released, Crystal Dynamics had secured a sequel deal with Activision to act as the publisher. Crystal Dynamics would develop a follow-up to Blood Omen called Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver in 1999. However, prior to this, Silicon Knights would file a lawsuit against Crystal Dynamics as they wanted to secure ownership of the IP. During the lawsuit, an injunction was requested to stop the publication of Soul Reaver, with Silicon Knights even accusing Crystal Dynamics of plagiarism. The dispute would be settled privately, which means somebody was wrong and they didn't want to admit it, and Crystal Dynamics kept the rights provided that they continue to credit Silicon Knights. In 2012, public records from the court case were published on NeoGAF, which showed that Silicon Knights largely ceded the IP rights to Crystal Dynamics under financial duress. They also claimed that Crystal Dynamics broke a contract agreement with Activision and that Crystal Dynamics failed to inform Silicon Knights that they would be leaving the publishing business and becoming developers. Silicon Knights accused Crystal Dynamics of lying to Activision, claiming that Crystal Dynamics misrepresented themselves to Activision as the developers of Blood Omen. They also claimed that after Crystal Dynamics privately approached some of Silicon Knights' staff to poach them for their Kain 2 prototype while also disparaging the company to Activision, which is kind of sketchy. But what to remind the audience, Crystal Dynamics were people who flew members of their staff across the country with no accommodations.
Yeah, so they might have done sketchy things in the past.
But they were always doing sketchy things.
Right. Also, and to be fair, these are all claims made by Silicon Knights in a court filing. These were not proven claims. These are allegations that were made by Silicon Knights that were made note of during their court cases against them. I don't know if they were made under oath. I just know that these were part of the court filings. So these could have just been accusations. I want to say that as a classic Gaming Brothers legal disclaimer.
That's right. We're not lawyers, so
don't sue us. Crystal Dynamics. Please don't fly us to Ontario and not pay for our hotel. Regardless of all this drama, the rights remained with Crystal Dynamics, who would continue publishing future games in the Legacy of Kain series. As we mentioned, Soul Reaver would release in 1999. Soul Reaver 2 would release in 2001. Blood Omen 2 would release in 2002. And Legacy of Kain Defiance would release in 2003. In 2024, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 were remastered and packaged together as a kind of one and done deal by Asper, who are involved in a lot of remasters of older games. So it's not super surprising they handled that port.
Yeah, by the time I got exposed to Legacy of Kain, I think they were on Soul Reaver 2 or Blood Omen 2, and I felt like there was far too many games previously that I couldn't play whatever games were going on in the series.
It is a little confusing with their naming structure, where it goes
Yes.
Blood Omen, Soul Reaver 2, Blood Omen 2. That is frustrating to me.
That defiance. They're defiantly stating that it's the end of the frustrating naming nomenclature.
There was also a few canceled projects, such as a game that was in development from Climax Studios called Legacy of Kain Dead Sun, and there was going to be a free-to-play multiplayer action game from Psyonix called Nosgoth. Dennis Dyack is reportedly planning to release a spiritual successor to Blood Omen called Dead House Sonata, which is intended to be a free-to-play competitive action game. Currently, no release date is set. Apparently, the game was originally being developed in Unity, though in January of this year, he announced that they were shifting development from Unity to the Unreal Engine, meaning that largely a lot of the game will have to be remade, I assume. I'm not super familiar with game design. I don't know how much of Unity and Unreal can be like transposed from one to the other, but I'm going to guess that that does require some heavy lifting, so maybe we'll see the game come out within the next year or so. Outside of the games, Legacy of Kain does have a few non-game stuff, or at least one of them. There is a graphic novel that was written by Joshua Viola and Angie Haddop, with art by Juan Samu, lettering by Jeremiah Lambert, and colors by Zach Atkinson. The graphic novel is called Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver The Dead Shall Rise, and reportedly was poorly received by fans. It was part of a Kickstarter project that got some decent funding from fans, and then it came out and fans were disappointed. So, per the norm with some Kickstarters, especially ones tied to much beloved IPs of the past. And that will do it for our Legacy of Kain episode, unless Seth has any other thoughts on Legacy of Kain. If Seth's friend from college is listening to this episode, let us know if we covered Legacy of Kain to your liking.
That's right.
I feel a little bad that this is not a game that's personal to me, so I don't have a ton to add in terms of my own personal memories, but producer Doug, if you have any thoughts on Legacy of Kain that you want to remind us about or tell us about, let us know. Send us an email. We'll maybe read them out in the next episode. But getting into our retro rewinds, Seth had me play a game that he told me was called Aro and Elmi Fighting the Bacteria Gang for MS-DOS. That's not what the game is called, because the game is actually called Aro und Elmi im Kampf gegen die Bakterienbande. It was a German game developed by Related Design Software and published by Very Interactive Sales Tools, and was released in 1996 to promote toothpaste. In the game, you play as anthropomorphic toothpaste tubes as you travel through someone's mouth, and you fight off harmful bacteria. You fight the bacteria by launching toothpaste from your head, which goes in an arch as a droplet out of your head and lands on the bacteria and kills them. You also have a screen clearing move, which I think is mouthwash, but I'm not entirely sure. It's a small little red bottle, and when you use it, it wipes the screen clear. I think it's supposed to be mouthwash. I would know if I could read or speak any German, as in the whole game is in German, so I have no clue what's happening, to be honest. Also, the music is very good. It's just this incredibly catchy, repetitive Eurobeat. Definitely feels like something that came out of Europe in the 1990s. It's a great game, but does not hold up in the slightest. It is very like generic platformer, kind of sloppy. Definitely like they needed to shell out a game to promote this toothpaste, but it's one of those games that I think if I lived in Germany and I had it as a kid, I probably would have loved this. This would have been my Chex Quest if I was a German child in the 1990s. This is what Chex Quest would have been for me, was Aro Undelmi Ein Kampf gegen die Bakterienbande. So that's that game. Next week, Seth, I want you to play a game about teeth. I want you to play Tooth Protectors for the Atari 2600.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. Zach had me play President-Elect, the 1988 edition for MS-DOS, which was developed and published by SSI, or Strategic Simulation Inc. The 1988 version was built on the 1984 version, but this time 1988. So it was covering the election of Bush versus Dukakis. You could play the game via multiplayer, and you can also play it versus the computer. The game was released for MS-DOS, Commodore 64, Apple II, and the REST in 1987, so they didn't even know who was going to win. And essentially, you play through election night, where the votes come in instantaneously, and you play the events up to it. You could also have the elections results come in real time, which takes 2 to 6 hours of watching them come through. There are some historical scenarios, and you can kind of adjust it and make up scenarios to see how the election results could have happened if perhaps it was Bush versus somebody else that wasn't Dukakis, and see what would happen, and then you would be able to see the elections come through. We covered this game back in episode 200 when we talk about a number of presidential games. If you like games that look like a mainframe from the 80s and you really enjoy political machine type games, then you may enjoy this game, but it is very, very, very old style. If you want to play a political style game that's more modern, I would recommend the Democracy series if you like democracy, and I would recommend the Suzerain series if you want to simulate the US. So those are kind of my recommendations. I don't necessarily think that the 1988 President-Elect holds up. Next week, Zach, you could play Barney Hide and Seek on the Sega Genesis.
I assume that game is also about the presidential battle between Bush and Dukakis.
Barney Hide and Seek on the Sega Genesis?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Seth. And thank you, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Again, if you have any thoughts or memories on the Legacy of Kain series, be sure to email us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. We're available wherever podcasts can be found via Podbean, iTunes, or iHeartRadio. We're available on social media, Classic Gaming Brothers, CG Brothers Pod. We're available on Twitch, Classic Gaming Brothers. We're available on YouTube, Classic Gaming Brothers. Like and subscribe. We're available on Patreon. We're also available on our website, www.classicgamingbrothers.com. With that, Seth, am I forgetting anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.